What's up, guys? Armchair Tuna back again with another video, and in today's video I'm going to do a tier list of all of the perks that are in Grounded. Now, originally this was going to be two separate videos of the top 5 best perks and the top 5 worst perks. However, I decided to change it and just combine it into a tier list video, but the original idea for that video was provided by Love for Dreams. So this video and all the credit goes to them. But anyways, let's get right into this tier list now. To start off, we have Ant Annihilator, And what Ant Annihilator does is gives you extra damage and defense against all the ants in the game. But this perk, it's alright. I mean, if you're raiding the ant den, I would say it's pretty good, but for doing anything else, it's not really the best. But I'm still gonna put it in probably mid B tier, as it's still a pretty good perk to have around. Maybe when they add the Ant Queen in the future, this perk could maybe be boosted to A tier or maybe even low S tier, but this is where I'm going to put the perk for now. For our next perk, we have Assassin, and what Assassin does is, while using daggers, you're able to cause enemies to bleed, and its mastery bonus is being able to deal more damage from the bleed effects. And this is honestly a pretty decent perk, especially when the Widow Dagger is probably the best dagger in the game to use this for, as it can apply poison, it can get the pond moss underwater, just a really fast weapon, probably one of the best one-handed weapons in the game. So I'm gonna have to put this in A tier. This perk's pretty good. Now for our next perk, it is gonna be the good old Apex Predator. Now, honestly, it's just God tier. The fact it can just give all of the boss weapons just a massive buff, while they're already like some of the best weapons in the entire game, is just amazing. This perk, it's just super solid. I highly recommend using this if you're using a boss weapon. But let's get on to the next perk, and our next perk is going to be Barbarian. Now, Barbarian it's kind of an odd perk. What Barbarian does is it boosts your amount of damage you deal with clubs by around 20-25%, I believe, but you're unable to perfect block. And its mastery bonus is you're able to regenerate health. So most of you probably are thinking, well, this sounds pretty good. Will I put it in A tier, maybe even God tier? It's going to be C tier. The amount of health it gives is just not good because of like the perfect block, the ability to not be able to perfect block, as this game heavily focuses on being able to do that. And the fact that you can't really parry with this perk just does not make it that good of a perk. I kind of wish that they would buff like the amount of health they gave you in the future instead of it just regenerating 1 health per second, but this is where it's going to be at right now. And let's go on to the next perk, and our next perk is going to be Bardic Inspiration. And what Bardic Inspiration does is gives your allies buffs every time you shoot a bow. Now, this perk is pretty good, as not only can you apply, strength, regeneration, a few other buffs, but those are the two main things that go for this perk, which makes it honestly a pretty solid perk. So I'm going to have to put it probably probably mid low A tier. This is a pretty solid perk, but you do have to use a bow and also like run a summoner build or have friends with you in order to get the most value out of it. But that's where I'm going to put it. I think it's a pretty fair ranking. And for our next perk, it is going to be Blade Master. What Blade Master does is for enemies to deal less damage to you, which is honestly a pretty good effect. As well as the mastery bonus being attacking creatures with a sword temporarily removes your exhaustion timer. This perk is pretty good. Ever since the Infected Broodmother got added, the Toenail Scimitar and the Blade Master perk has gotten a massive increase in usage. And it's for a good reason. The fact that you're able to take less damage from, a boss that already deals some of the most amount of damage in the game makes it a really good perk. So for this perk, I'm honestly going to have to put it probably high A tier. This is a really good perk. In fact, it might be low, maybe low S tier, but yeah, I'll just stick in, high A tier. Really solid perk. I highly recommend you use it. And let's get on to our next perk. And our next perk is going to be Buff Lungs. And what Buff Lungs does is it just gives you more max stamina, which honestly ain't even that bad. It's definitely a perk to where I would use if I have a free slot available. But for this perk, I'm probably going to have to put it in... Probably God tier, because getting extra stamina is really good, especially how versatile it can be. It's just a really good perk all around. And speaking of versatile perks is Cardio Fan. Now, Cardio Fan, I probably would have put in C tier, but ever since it got a buff to where it gives exhaustion recovery and also the hyper stamina effect, once again, easy God tier perk. You just regenerate stamina so quickly with this perk that it's almost unfair. And the fact that you can get it so early on in the game just once again makes it just a really solid perk. And for our next perk, we have Chopper, which is kind of just a bootleg version of Blade Master, as you're able to deal more damage to enemies instead of enemies dealing less damage to you. And its mastery bonus is that it removes the stamina regen delay when not exhausted. This perk is pretty good, but the main downside of it is that you have to use axes, and obviously the axes in the game aren't really the best, but I'm going to have to put this probably low A tier. Once again, a really solid perk. It's just probably not the best, maybe even high B tier, but that's probably where I'm going to stick it for now. The next perk we have is Corporate Kickback, and Corporate Kickback, once again, just a really good perk. And what it does is when you block enemy attacks, you have a chance to gain a mass amount of lifesteal. And I'm not going to lie, this perk carries through the Infected Broodmother, especially on her third phase, when she's dealing a bunch of damage. Let's just say you block one of her hits when you're at half health, and Corporate Kickback procs, just an easy way to get back all your health. By far, I'm gonna have to put this S tier. It is such a good perk to run. Honestly, this perk is by far one of the best. as well as coup de grace. Honestly, just god tier. This perk, the fact that you're able to deal just more damage in 1 in 10 hits, and then eventually 1 in 4 hits if you go to the picnic table, just makes it a really solid perk. Two super great perks back to back, and we are going to now go to not really such a super great perk, and that is Daredevil. And what Daredevil does is makes it to where you take less fall damage when falling in the air. This perk it's alright, but I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I'm probably going to have to put it in a probably low C tier. The only time where this perk would be useful is if you have a base that's high up in the air and you accidentally fall from it. Actually, wait, no, I'm going to move it to why would you use this. Like, the only time where this perk would be even usable is if you have a base high up in the air, and even then that's not really going to happen. So that's probably where I'm going to put it. And for our next perk, it is going to be Dissection Expert. And Dissection Expert is also another really decent perk. It allows you to have a chance to get better drops from creatures. So honestly, probably high into B tier. It is a pretty solid perk. However, it's not guaranteed. The chances of getting those rare drops aren't like the best, but they also aren't the worst to where, you don't want to run this perk. So really solid perk. Highly recommend making a mutation loadout with it just so you can easily swap to it after killing a boss to get more parts from it. And our next perk is Fresh Defense. Now, what Fresh Defense does is it allows have gas resistance, burn resistance, and sizzle protection. So that means you are not really going to be affected, like stink bugs and also the green shield bugs. You're going to have a much easier time fighting. Going through the charcoal and sandbox is also going to be real easy. And also, I think the burn resistance works for the Bombardier Beetle. So this perk, easy A tier. Actually, I'm going to put it on the higher end of A tier. Probably right under Blade Master, as this is a really solid perk for countering those specific insects. For our next perk, we have Grassmaster. And Grassmaster, it's going to be in why would you use this? It's just due to the fact that you already harvest grass at a... Actually, wait, no, I'm going to put it in C tier, actually. Low C tier. It's just the fact that you already harvest grass incredibly quick in this game. So there's pretty much no point in using this. So that is the reason. In fact, actually, I would probably swap Daredevil and also Grassmaster. Yeah, I'm sorry, Daredevil. Because, yeah, honestly, Daredevil has a lot more usage than Grassmaster. Next is Guard Dog. And Guard Dog, once again, is a pretty solid perk. It allows you to deal more damage while doing the base defenses and also the mixers, which absolutely helps you, especially while doing the super mixers to try to achieve 100%. So this is definitely going to be not A tier, B tier. Pretty solid perk. I would recommend using it. And for our next perk, it is Hauling Hero. Now, Hauling Hero, if I'm going to be honest, I'm probably going to have to put probably B tier, as this does help you quite a lot with building a base, but it's all right. Actually, no, it's not all right. It helps you a huge amount while building a base, but that's also what it's only used for. But it's still a really good perk. You know, B tier, maybe even low A tier is a good spot for it, but that's where I'm going to put it at. Next is Javelineer. And Javelineer, what it allows you to do is be able to kind of get like a Thorns effect every time you are hit. And its mastery bonus is charge attacks with spears deal additional damage. I'm also going to put this high B tier. The Thorns effect is really good, but the mastery bonus is just absolutely awful for this thing. It's not even that good for using the mastery bonus. Unless, like, maybe in the future they release the two-handed spear from the Leaked Lizard boss, as this would tremendously boost this perk's usage rate. And now we have Juicy. Why would you use this? Juicy is just not that good of a perk. You get it by getting all of the little juice boxes discovering all the little juice boxes in the lower yard. But by the time you do that, chances are you're already going to have a dew collector. So this is just not really worth it. Like, not really worth using. So that's where I would put it at. For our next perk is going to be Little Fist. And Little Fist recently hasn't been doing well. So as what they've done is they cap the amount of damage you can do with Little Fist at 100. And also, a little while before that, they made it to where once you get hit, it resets. Now, this perk, honestly, probably low end of B tier. It's just not that great anymore. As when you get hit now, you know, you obviously lose your fist combo. And also when it caps at 100, it's still not that good. So low end of C tier is probably a good place. And now we have Mance Serious Stranger. Mance Serious Stranger, probably mid B tier. It's honestly a really good perk. It's just the fact that the Mant just likes to like kind of bug out sometimes and not attack the enemy that's right in front of you. And also the fact that it sometimes has such a low proc rate that it kind of makes it kind of a mediocre perk. But our next perk is going to be Meat Shield. Now, Meat Shield, God tier. They buffed this perk recently, and the amount of health it gives you is just absolutely wonderful. This perk is by far like one of the best if you want to do with a generalist build. And for our next perk, it is going to be Murtine. Murtine, I'm probably going to have to put in C tier just because of the fact that maybe if there is like more sections of water in this game besides like the pond area, like maybe if there was like an upper yard version of the pond, but that's like just kind of not the case. So that's why I'm going to put it in C tier. It's still a decent perk to have when you're exploring the pond and getting like the bones, koi scales, other materials, but it's just like not really good out of that. But our next perk is Mithridism, and Mithridism makes it to the amount of poison you can resist. And honestly, this perk, it used to be God tier, but ever since they changed it to where it has 3 stages and you're not fully resistant now, I'm going to have to say maybe low end of A tier. Maybe higher, but it's still alright. Honestly, sometimes you can do without Mithridism, but I would still recommend it as a perk. But anyways, our next perk is Mom Jeans, and what Mom Jeans does is it summons spiderlings and also gives you extra poison damage. Now, the spiderlings aren't great, and the extra poison damage is like alright. But let me go back to the spiderlings real quick. The spiderlings do pretty much die in one hit. However, they can distract enemies. And the poison damage doesn't increase it by a lot, but it's still good to have. And this perk is much better from what it was ever since they did add the poison damage to it. So honestly, I'm going to have to say high into B tier. If you're using a summoner build, this perk is absolutely wonderful, but yeah, summoner poison build, it's wonderful, but anything else, it's alright. Natural Explorer, I'm honestly going to have to say low end of S tier. Really good perk for getting around the map. The map is like decently large and the day and night cycle goes by like pretty quick. So if you want to get to place to place, Natural Explorer is definitely a perk you want to use. Unless maybe you have zip lines, then Natural Explorer may not be the best perk, but in my eyes, it's still a really good perk to use for getting around the map, as I don't really have zip lines with me. But our next perk is going to be Parrymaster, and what Parrymaster does is once you hit a perfect block, it slightly extends your perfect block window for the next one, I believe, and also gives you more stamina. And this is kind of what I've experienced from using this perk. Sometimes it can be hit or miss, but I'm going to have to put it in A tier just because of the fact that it is still a pretty solid perk. I would recommend using it if you're, using a shield or something, as it can help out a lot. And for our next perk, it is going to be Rascal Rogue. And what Rascal Rogue does is it allows you to steal, it has a chance to steal an item off of an enemy. Now, this perk is pretty good. However, there are some enemies that, well, actually all the enemies have a certain item you can't steal from them. Like the infected broodmother, you can only steal a chunk from, like not the venom or like or the head, which is quite unfortunate, but similar to Dissection Expert, it's probably going to be high into B tier, as it is really good to try to get all the parts you need to build something. Just unfortunately, like, not the best. For our next perk, it is going to be Reliable Friend. And what Reliable Friend does is increases the amount of time you have to revive somebody. And it's alright. I'll give it that, but it's really only useful for multiplayer, so probably low end of B tier. If you're not rocking with friends, this perk is absolutely useless. However, if you are, banging perk. I would highly recommend using Reliable Friend for most situations. Maybe not all, but I would say most. And for our next perk is going to be Rock Cracker, and Rock Cracker, unlike Grassmaster, I'm going to put in C tier. It's because the rocks actually can tank a decent amount, which is honestly pretty good for this perk, as it can be worth using just so you could speed up the amount of time for harvesting rocks, but still kind of going to be on the low end of C tier, as it's not really the best, but, it is what it is. And for our next perk, it is going to be Sharpshooter. Now, Sharpshooter, what it does is, upon landing a shot with a bow or crossbow, upon running, it'll cost less stamina. And Candy Arrows, for its mastery bonus Candy Arrows will unlock their special properties. For example, Spicy Burns, Fresh Slows, and Sour Stuns. This is pretty good if you're using a bow or crossbow. And honestly, I would recommend, if you're doing a ranged build with that, I recommend it, but in terms of where it should be, definitely A tier. As with this, ranged builds are just so much better to use. I would recommend, if you're running with a bow or crossbow, definitely use this perk. I think it may be bug, though, to where you can only unlock it by using a bow, despite it does say landing a shot with a bow or crossbow in the description. So that is one downside for it, but still a really solid perk for using ranged builds or anything like that. And for our next perk is going to be shocking dismissal. Sorry. And what shocking dismissal does is blocked attacks have a chance to create an electrical burst. Now, this burst is similar to coup de grace, to the coup de grace effect, to where if you crit something, it'll kind of stagger it. And this also is AoE, so I would say this is probably an A tier perk. Really solid. I would recommend using it if you can. It's a highly underrated perk. And I just don't understand why not many people are using it more often. As I do feel like it's getting a bit of recognition taken away from it. Our next perk is Smasher, and Smasher, if you saw my video of using the worst weapon type against an enemy, you will know that hammers are probably the worst. So why would you use this? But what Smasher does is your hammer attacks slow down the speed of the enemy, and also hammer attacks stun much easier. It's not really a good perk. I mean, it is decent, but the whole hammer effect, the whole hammer as a weapon is still pretty mediocre. So I would just not recommend using this. For our next perk, we have Sour Sensation. And what Sour Sensation does is it pretty much gives you thorns. Now, the amount of thorns this perk does, it's okay. Well, the amount of damage the thorn effect does, it's alright. I did do a thorns video a while back with the black ant armor and with a spear. And the thorns did pretty much carry that build. But this perk, it's okay. But I'm still going to put it at B tier. As, maybe if it did more damage against the, just in general, it would be a really good option for dealing with ads and such, and the likes of that. And our next perk is going to be Spicy Safety. And what Spicy Safety does is gives you stabbing and smashing resistance, but a few amount of enemies in the game do stabbing and smashing. Some of them, the most notable are the Ladybug and Black Ox for the smashing damage, and the bees and Wasp. And someone told me this, but also the Infected Broodmother does do stabbing. So this perk, it is pretty good, but unfortunately, actually no, it is pretty good, but it only works against a certain group of enemies in this game. So I would say probably a high end of B tier, as it is pretty good, but unfortunately it does kind of lack a bit in terms of resisting damage. And for the next perk, it is going to be Spore Lord. And Spore Lord, they, like, I'm going to have to put why would you use this. I get what they were trying to do with trying to make it balanced for when the infected bird mother came out, but for when you get this perk and also the armor set, it's going to be at the very end of the game. So you would think, oh well, the infected bird mother armor set's probably going to be in the best of the game, right? But it's not. The infected bird mother armor set, it's just not that good. The effects of it are so minuscule, and this only what this perk does exactly is it applies a random effect with when you deal damage with explosives. But what that buff is, as it only goes 1%, then 2%, then 3%, and then what's going to end up happening with this perk is that it's going to end up going to like 10% only for that buff, and then the fight's going to end, and then that all of those buffs that you get are just going to be wiped, which it just does not make this perk that great. The next perk we have is Trapper Peeper. Now, Trapper Peeper, I'm probably going to have to put... This may surprise you all, but probably C tier. And before all of you say, well, why did you put Trapper Peeper in C tier? Trapper Peeper is such a good perk. You can, first of all, you can only use it with coup de grace. And second of all, you have to get 60 gold cards in order to get this thing tier 3. In my videos, I managed to get this perk to tier 3 when it was bugged back at the start of the 1.0 update, to where you only needed to peep creatures instead. But that is like the major downside of it. The damage, well, the crit increase is pretty good, but those are the two major downsides of this perk. So that's why I'm putting it on the higher end of C tier. For our next perk, it is going to be Truffle Tussle. And what Truffle Tussle does, it pretty much turns your unarmed attacks into explosives. Now, this perk is pretty good. Maybe if you also paired it up with Spore Lord, but like I said, Spore Lord is a pretty mediocre perk because of like the low buffs it gives. But unlike Spore Lord, Truffle Tussle's explosions are not to be messed with. It has great crowd clear, and it's honestly a pretty good perk for a generalist fist build, with the one major downside being if you use this against the infected brood mother, you're actually going to be crippling yourself because of the fact that you're going to be healing her every time you punch her. But in terms of where this perk should go, for fist builds, probably low end of A tier. I think people just kind of forgot how good Truffle Tussle was as a perk in general since the infected broodmother came out, and I kind of wish it was used more often. But anyways, our final perk for this tier list is going to be Widow Wizard. And what Widow Wizard does is, when using staffs, it will apply different damage types. For example, when using the Spicy Staff, it does a burning effect. The Mint Staff slows them, and the Sour Staff stuns. And the Mastery bonus for this is, attacking with a staff reduces the stamina cost of additional staff attacks. And that honestly makes using the staffs a really decent option. But in terms of where I would put this perk, probably B tier, as you do have to use staffs for it. but it's still a pretty good perk in general. Probably a decent mid-tier perk. But anyways, that is going to be my tier list. If there's anything that you think should be changed, please let me know in the comments. And once again, this video couldn't have been done without the suggestion of Love for Dream, so make sure to support him, as without his suggestion in the comments, y'all wouldn't have this video. But anyways, I'll see y'all next time, and peace.